Hey everyone, welcome back to the PAC-South podcast. We are officially at the end of bowl season. All of the regular bowl games have been played. We only have the semifinals and the finals left for the FBS playoffs. Of course, the FCS playoffs just ended, and if you did not watch that, what an incredible game. Montana State just edges out Illinois State in an instant thriller, 35-34 in overtime in a game that Vanderbilt Stadium is used to seeing, in which another team takes over their stadium. Pat, what were your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, that was a really great game. Super back and forth. Montana State got out to that fairly big, I guess you could say, lead. And then Illinois State had that crazy fourth quarter push to try and obviously force overtime or, um, maybe they were thinking they scored with what, like 5-ish minutes left in the game. Maybe they were thinking
Yeah,
they
it
could get
was like
us.
5-ish minutes. It was 28-28.
Yeah.
I missed how Montana State gave the ball away.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, there's like a minute left, and it's like, oh, Illinois
There's a
State's gonna
chance.
take a
Yeah.
field goal to take the lead here. That's blocked. Montana State, I think, had like 3 fumble snaps the entire game. So then they lose their chance to win in regulation. We go to overtime. Illinois State scores, does not convert. Montana State scores on 4th and 10 to the taco, and then obviously extra point, and they win the ball game. Their first national championship since 1984, in a year of kind of like group of 5
Hmm.
conspiracies, you could say. 1984 being the last time a non-power team won in BYU. So kind of justice from a full Division One level. Montana State being very close recently, and this kind of being the year. So very fun for the Bobcats, very well deserved. And if everything files in correctly, we could have a week 1 matchup of 2 national championships from this past year. That is, if Oregon is able to get it
Yeah,
done this
that's right.
season. They beat the Bobcats in week 1, I believe 59-13.
Hmm.
Obviously, before the Bobcats got it going, 2 different divisions. You see the different skill levels there. Um, is that a quiet showing of how good the Ducks are from last year to this year, seeing what they did to the Bobcats?
Yeah, I mean, I think it feels like if you're an Oregon fan, there's kind of that growth in the mindset that, all right, we're not just going to roll over an FCS team because they're an FCS team and we're Oregon. That they kind of came out of the gates trying to prove something, trying to prove that they were different this year. They kind of had that killer instinct, I guess you could say. And it definitely shows in the reflection of not just how they played that game, but obviously the box score as well. Um, I don't know. I think Oregon's an interesting story. I know we're going to get there in a little bit, but they're kind of pushing back on those narratives that had been written about them as a program, had been written about Dan Lanning as a coach through their performances in the playoff to this point.
Yeah. Obviously, a big narrative from last year and this year is the teams with the bye week, the first 4 seeds in the playoff. Last year going 0-4, this year 1-3. Oregon last year being one of those 4 teams. Um, Indiana's able to break the streak, and they do so emphatically.
Oh yeah,
Everyone else, though, Georgia could have gotten it done. Everyone else, though, did not look good in their games. 6 of those bye week teams were blown out in it. Does this kind of guarantee that we're going to the 16 team format? Like, everyone seems to come off of that bye week pretty badly, except for Indiana.
yeah. I think there's going to be a heavy push regardless from we'll say like TV markets, TV execs, and maybe like some of the smaller power conferences for this 16 team format because it gives those smaller teams or smaller conferences, not Big Ten or SEC, a better opportunity to get more representation, and it's not the Big 12 pinning all of its hopes on Texas Tech, which unfortunately for them didn't work out, or the ACC pinning all of its hopes on Miami. right? Especially with the fact that we have Notre Dame guaranteed a spot as long as they're ranked within the top 12 moving forward. I think there's going to be more and more voices calling out for an expansion of the playoff to A, obviously generate more revenue, but B, also give some of these other conferences more of a chance, more of a shot, right? Because even though there's that whole narrative about James Madison and Tulane not belonging this year, you can expand to 16, keep the group of 5 possibly getting 2 spots in that, and then not, as detractors might say, hurt the, we'll say, competitive integrity of the playoff, right? And you're not going to see, I'll say, as many complaints or gripes from fan bases and from coaches, although I'm sure whatever team finishes 17 or 18 is going to have choice words for the committee.
Yeah. There has been talk of going all the way to 24. Would you agree that that's too far at that point?
Yeah. I think, I don't know. In a way, I feel like we're already too far. And I feel like we've already opened Pandora's box by expanding the playoff from 4 to 12. And obviously, there's no way to just shut the lid and go back to, let's say, a BCS system, go back to the 14 playoff, something like that. But I feel like if you keep expanding and expanding and expanding, A, you're bringing player safety into question at that point. And B, you're kind of diluting the product and you're diluting the regular season a little bit, right? Because if a team that loses 4 regular season games can make the playoff and get hot, what's the point of playing those games? So I feel like anything after this 12, in my opinion, is too much, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a shift to 16 relatively soon.
Okay. Very interesting there. It is going to be an interesting thing to watch. I think it comes up in February of this year is when they'll make the decision on if they're going to expand or not. They already pushed the deadline back. Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think that we're kind of in a mucky territory, you could say, for this potential expansion. The fact that they expanded so quickly from 4 to 12, I think that 4 to 8 or 4 to 10 would have been better to initially see. I'm not opposed to getting larger to see more games, see more football. Obviously, March Madness is a massive success, and with that playoff system, you have about 20% of the teams of Division One that are able to get into that tournament. Of course, basketball is a very different sport than football, so the percentage shouldn't necessarily line up. And I think that we're kind of at the point where this is as close as it can get for competitiveness sake. But I don't think it should only be the top 12 teams, because part of what makes March Madness so great is every single one of the conference tournament champions get in. So if, say, Vermont has a great end of the season, they win their tournament, they get in, they're hot. Next thing you know, they win 2 games, they're in the Sweet 16. That's a Cinderella team. That's a great story. If we only do these 12 teams, even if a James Madison goes 12-1, they're still not getting in based on the current ranking format for college football. So Group of 5 still needs to be able to have their chance, but I don't think you need to expand it to the point that every single conference champion gets in, because as good as Western Michigan was throughout courses of the season, they didn't deserve to be in a playoff spot. Similar to Kennesaw State, they were a great team. I think for them, if they were to have gotten into a playoff spot, it would have been very ugly, as good of a story as they were. So select teams of the Group of 5 should have their chance each and every season, but it shouldn't be guaranteed in the current model. If you blow it up to 48 teams, sure, but I think college football has bigger issues at that point if they were to do that.
Yeah.
So we'll see what they come up with in February. Hopefully we kind of keep it. I think that they should keep it at the 12 team to see 1 or 2 more seasons of what we actually have and what we're looking at. Surely enough, the ACC cannot bomb themselves 2 more years in a row, but we never know. We're going to take a quick pause on our talks to talk about everything that we have going on at 626 Productions. So this episode is being posted on 626 Productions and our new podcast channel for this show, the PacSouth YouTube channel. Obviously, you'll see this episode, you'll see all of our future episodes and our past episodes from the PacSouth when we were building up to the PacSouth and the 626 Sports Productions uh, show that was kind of like leading into this. So we'll have a lot of our past shows with it. We'll have future vignettes. We'll have all of our future podcast shows here on this channel. We also will be going live starting in theory today on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and on Substack. So please be sure to follow us and watch us and listen to us there as well. We are looking forward to all sorts of new content as well as what we are already making right now. Our new show for 626 Productions as well will be starting here in 2 weeks. We're very proud to present that. It'll be the 206 Foot Productions. It is going to be a soccer specific show. To North American soccer is initially going to start off with our USL 2 division in the Northwest. Is going to be myself and my friend Tomas with special guest appearances from that man across from me, Pat, talking about some of our European soccer as we get to specific points in the football season for that. So we are very excited for that as well. That will start initially here on 626 Productions and be posted throughout 2026, as well as on its own YouTube channel as well. As for PacSouth content on 626 Productions, that will continue for another 2 weeks for new postings, and all content will be available until April 1st. Starting April 1st, it will all be only on the PacSouth YouTube channel. Of course, any new or special content for PacSouth will be posted only to that channel as well. So please be sure to subscribe to that channel and the new 206 Foot Productions channel as well. We are very much looking forward to all the new things in 2026. Okay, now that that is out of the way, we also have a very fun thing to introduce to the PAC-South podcast, and that's the PAC-South Conference. So each and every season, we will have this new conference where certain teams will be, I guess, highlighted, you could say. We have permanent members to this conference and temporary members to this conference. Temporary members are typically only 1 year. However, they can get renewed or earn their chance to continue playing. So obviously, with the football season coming to an end, we will talk about our football season. Our conference was very much a part of kind of what teams mean the most to us so far. So if you haven't noticed before, obviously we've had Notre Dame stuff. You look over Pat's right shoulder, we have Florida stuff, South Carolina stuff currently being worn, UCF stuff worn in the past. So we will go over our current teams list. Our permanent members for 2026, and forward, are the South Carolina Gamecocks, UCF Knights, Notre Dame Fighting Irish, the Oregon State Beavers, New Mexico Lobos, and Central Michigan Chippewas. Our current temporary teams are the Charlotte 49ers, 76ers, 49ers. 49ers. They're a great program. Duke Blue Devils, Washington Huskies, Iowa State Cyclones, Florida Gators, and the Florida State Seminoles. So we kind of took a basketball approach to our standings for football. Obviously, without following it throughout the season, it's in a way a lot to kind of take in at first. And I've kind of briefly discussed with you how the standings
Mm-hmm.
finished up. But hearing that list, who is kind of like your top three teams of the Pac South going in?
I would say for basketball, um, I don't know. The third team, I feel like is kind of a flex almost, or like a tweener. I think the top two are pretty clear. Iowa State, who has an argument as one of the best teams in the country, and obviously Duke is Duke. Those two are going to be right there all season long. They're both currently ranked in the top five. Duke picking up a big gutsy win last night against Louisville. Iowa State still undefeated. So those two are going to be there, I feel like, pretty much most of the year. And then I feel like that third spot, I don't know. I feel like it's going to definitely rotate a little bit. But I feel like I'll say the two. Let me go three. The three teams that I feel like can kind of flex into that or out of that, there's an argument for each of them, are Florida, right? There's obviously talent on that Florida roster. They beat a pretty good Georgia team yesterday, pretty convincingly. But then there's moments where it just seems like it's not really meshing and not really clicking. Rough showing in Missouri the other night, leading them to open the SEC season or play with a loss. Then you've got Notre Dame, who's kind of been like pretty up and down this season when it comes to basketball. There was higher expectations than there has been in the past few years for Notre Dame hoops, and again, kind of a mixed bag of results, right? You're not really sure what you're getting. And then the other team on this list is a team that's performed really, really well up to this point. And I don't know, I feel like it's getting overlooked a little bit simply because of the conference they play in. Yes, I know UCF is ranked, but I'm not going to put them in this spot. I'm going to go with New Mexico for this one because they've been a really solid mid-major this year. They had a slight hiccup against Boise State, but the pit is an incredibly hard place to play, and B, I feel like the Mountain West is really divided this year. You know, like you've got pretty clearly Utah State at the top, and then kind of like 2 through 5 is fairly interchangeable. You've got Boise, you've got New Mexico, you've got Colorado State, you've got Grand Canyon. On the outside looking in on that bubble is some other fairly decent teams like Wyoming, right? So I feel like the fact that the Mountain West is competitive might get New Mexico some more love from the committee this year, open up better chances for higher quad victories, things like that. And that's why I could see an argument for any of those three teams. Again, I know UCF has had a really strong start to the season, but Big 12 play is just so grueling. I want to see a few more games before I kind of lock them into that spot.
Sure. Yeah, obviously Oklahoma State is a bad loss for them, but they open up conference play with a win over Kansas.
Yeah.
So kind of a Jekyll and Hyde team to start off their meaningful game. So we'll see what the Knights are able to do. But yes, the Pac-South, our standings are based on point system. For basketball, it will be quad based, obviously, so they'll get points depending on their quad wins. Plus, if it is a non-conference, say quad 2 win or a conference quad 2 win. So that will depend on how many points they get for certain matchups. Football, same thing. You get points based on if it is a Power 4 conference win, Power 4 non-conference win. Different criteria means different numbers for their games. And we value rivalries here on the PAC-South podcast. So whatever it is, if it is a, say, Power 4 non-conference win, but it's a rivalry game, they get points for both. So you're able to double dip into the points on wins. I sent you a screenshot as I was going through it, and I think it's pretty clear who the number one team was. Who else kind of would shock you before knowing the full list of our total? Like who else you have like kind of in the top?
So I don't know. I guess I don't know. One of the teams that kind of surprised me, not to spoil things, on how high they were from a football perspective, and actually is pretty surprisingly, I'll say, competent or decent from a basketball perspective this year, is Washington.
Yeah.
Usually, you don't really think of Washington as like a consistently good, I'll say, basketball program, right? Like they had that year with Stewart on the team where they were pretty good. They had the year with Markel Fultz. They had a few years with Isaiah Thomas where they've had success, but it's kind of been like staggered a little bit. Um,
Indeed.
However, they've gotten off to a fairly decent start this season. Obviously, losing to in-city rivals Seattle was not ideal for them. But the Big Ten, I know we were talking about it off camera. The Big Ten is just so deep this year. There's tons of opportunities for quad one and quad two victories. Some of those can be quad one victories on your home court, which is even better because you don't have to win on the road against a quality opponent. So I feel like Washington could quietly rack up some points in that regard. I think the thing that might hurt them, however, is I don't know how many points we're doing for it, but tournament bid. I'm not sure if Washington's a tournament team. However, they're kind of like one of those squads where I feel like you don't want to play them all the time, and they can get some what we might consider shocking wins.
Yeah, I mean they've already gotten a shocking win over Michigan on the road,
Mm-hmm.
kind of to start off conference play. I mean, if they get 3 or 4 of those, is that enough for them to say make the tournament at like a 500 team? If you get like wins over say a Michigan again, because they will be playing them at home here in about a week and a half. You get a win over a Sparta, you get a win over an Illinois. Is that enough to get in? It's like a 500 team.
I don't know. I feel like what the committee's kind of like, I guess you could say, shown us a little bit is they're willing to expand for like these programs that are kind of on the fringe in like the SEC, the lesser extent ACC, but Big 12, Big 10. But then there's a lot of pushback when you put in a team that's like, let's say 18 and 16 and a Big 10 squad over, I don't know, maybe like say like a hypothetical Miami, Ohio, right? They're off to a perfect start so far in this basketball season, but let's say Akron wins the MAC tournament, right? If you put in a mid-level Washington over Miami, Ohio, despite those wins and despite obviously the conference disparity, there's going to be some pushback from some people in the basketball circles. So I feel like it's like one of those tough things, but if you win enough games in the Big Ten, you're pretty much guaranteed a spot in the dance. So I think if Washington can, like you say, pull off some of those upset wins, like beating a Michigan State, like beating an Illinois, like beating Michigan, that can only help their circumstances and help their case. Yeah. And then from a football perspective, I don't know. I feel like Central Michigan sneakily put up some points this year because like they were right on the fringe of making the MAC championship. Obviously, losing to Western Michigan loses them some points in that potential like rivalry boost, I guess you could say. But the Chippewas sneaky had a pretty solid season this year, and it seems like they're committed to running that back. Gave their coach an extension. Seems like they're trying to put some money or as much money as a MAC team can into getting quality guys in that program and staying in that program. So I feel like the Chippewas might have been like a sneaky higher than expected performer for me.
Okay. Yeah, Chippewas had a very good year. I think outside of their bowl game, I mean, even going into their bowl game, I kind of had a feeling the Northwestern game would be a good game. I figured the Wildcats would win that. Had no idea that was going to be a blowout the way that it was. So obviously disappointing for the Chippewas to end their season like that. As it comes to points, everyone is ranked from top to bottom on points alone. It is strictly from our system. We did not even factor in our rankings for it this season, so that could change in years to come. But it's just strictly group of 5 wins, conference, non-conference, rivalry, winning records, bowl games, etc. So we don't necessarily know what good and bad is in these seasons, except we do know what the worst is. And that unfortunately does belong to Charlotte, who is only able to register 1 point, and that is from their FCS win. No other wins for the 49ers this year. They are the bottom of our table. Going up from Charlotte, we have Oregon State, South Carolina, Florida State, UCF, Florida, Central Michigan, then above, all of our Florida teams. So that's pretty notable for the Chippewas. From Central Michigan with 48 points, you have New Mexico at 57. Iowa State losing Matt Campbell, a disappointment of a season by many regards for them. They finished with 59 points, just behind Notre Dame at 60 points. We'll get to them in a moment. Washington at 65, and then the 2025-26 conference champions, the Duke Blue Devils. They win the ACC. Bowl City represented big time for us in our football conference. Obviously, winning a bowl game the way they did, winning their conference championship, and then having notable Power Four conference wins in the ACC as they went, really drove them. They ended with a pretty notable, what was it, 114 points in
Pretty big
perspective.
gap too.
Washington, and what you could call a disappointing season for them as well, with how it ended at 65. Notre Dame finishes with 60 points. Part of the reason they did not get more points, we gave bowl appearances points, and then bowl wins a point. And then if they were to have made the playoffs, that would have been a different set of points as well. Obviously, with Notre Dame just excluded from the playoffs and deciding to sit out, that kind of hurt them a little bit. Had they decided to at least play a bowl game, they would have come in second over Washington. But I mean, 3 rivalry victories on the season over Southern Cal, Navy, and Boston College still feels good for the Irish. But of course, this is kind of national championship or bust currently under Marcus Freeman. And I would say that was definitely shown in our rankings. But Washington and Iowa State, what could be considered low end seasons for them, still not bad
Yeah,
showings
yeah, pretty
in our
solid.
conference standings. 65 and 59 points respectively. It should be interesting to see what those teams are able to do next year. I don't believe Iowa State will be a team that will come back, but with Washington, say, potentially coming back, could be interesting to see what they're able to do. Speaking of Washington,
I was gonna say that's a perfect segue right there.
if you've not been noticing the news, Damon Williams re-signed with the Huskies a couple of days ago for an NIL deal. Currently sophomore redshirt, I believe, so he has some eligibility remaining. But maybe not for the Huskies. It sounds like he may be on the road if he gets his way. It seems like LSU may be trying to pull him away from Seattle. Washington already said they are looking for legal battle after he declared for the portal on a no contract clause. They all legal action is on the table. Washington themselves is not putting his name in the portal, so they are very much fighting tooth and nail for it. I don't know how this works out for Washington. That is, in this situation, holding him hostage when it's clear that he is leaving. But I think the best case scenario is to get the money from whatever team could be pulling him away. What is kind of your take on? I mean, this is reality television. Is essentially this point, like it's getting ugly pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think this is kind of like the perfect example of why we need better regulation and better governance with the portal. Obviously, like there's the idea of contracts now. That's why Washington is saying that they will pursue legal action or are considering, I guess, pursuing legal action if Damon Williams does wind up leaving. But I feel like this is a huge precedent setting occasion, right? Like if the NCAA allows Damon Williams to break this contract, transfer, um, this is going to change the way NIL really works and operates, because now, yeah, you might have agreed to this deal with so and so school, but 2 days later, LSU or Texas or Michigan, right? Any of these bigger schools loses their quarterback or loses their D lineman or loses their corner to either an unexpected transfer, the draft, whatever it might be, and now they're going to come calling to you, and you don't have to stay at your school, right? So, I don't know. I feel like if this is allowed to happen, then we are truly entering like the Wild West portion of the portal era. And like the whole idea of certain times recruits can talk to schools and blah blah blah, like we already can tell that's a joke because these guys are entering the portal with do not contact tags. So how do you already know where you want to play, and what opportunities are out there for you before you're technically entering your name to transfer at all? So I really feel like the NCAA has to take some sort of stance here, in terms of regulating transfers, in terms of regulating um, how schools operate and can operate, right? Like in the NFL, for example, if you try to contact a coach or a player outside of the designated times for negotiation, you forfeit a draft pick or you forfeit X amount of money, right? Could we see, I don't know, obviously there's no drafts in college football, but maybe you lose some scholarships, or maybe what really hurts more than that is you lose some of the revenue sharing from your conference for violations. Is that what the NCAA is going to do? Probably not. I feel like they're going to just kind of keep this rolling until either they really have to step in or some other governing body decides to step in. But this is really like a trajectory altering decision if he is allowed to leave, and transfer to, I know the buzz is LSU, so we'll hypothetically say LSU.
I mentioned LSU because of all the rumors around that. Obviously, Sam Levitt was the one who actually
Yeah.
had the visit, and then around halftime of the game that he was visiting on is kind of when the news that Damon Williams would, I believe, go to the portal, and then it was very quickly reported afterward that LSU was kind of tagged to Damon Williams, and he was not going to be, uh, or he had the no contact clause in the portal. So very interesting there. I mean, I think the biggest note, obviously, this is the biggest story, but biggest note of the portal so far is Sam Levitt still not having a home, like despite him going into the portal so early. He was kind of the biggest name and the earliest name to kind of go into the portal this season.
Yeah.
Um, Still not having a home, despite there being, in theory, plenty of opportunities. LSU having a new coach. You have Penn State before Rocco Beck did decide to join Matt Campbell again. Virginia Tech with James Franklin looking for a new coach. Or looking for a new quarterback under their new coach. So there were a lot of opportunities for Sam Levitt to have found a home by now. And here we are. I think that he's been officially declared for about two months or so.
Yeah.
Um, and it seems like we're just as far away as to begin with. And he's one of the best available in the portal. So this is
Yeah.
very interesting to see if these kind of like early portal entries are hindering. Because even someone like DJ Lagway, who was planning to stay at Florida before John Summerall came in, did not have good meetings with him, and then has decided to go to the portal after said meetings. It sounds like he's very close to either Florida State or I believe it was Georgia Tech.
I think so. Yeah.
Was the other team that was of interest, and what's that been? 2 weeks. So 2 weeks, 2 months. DJ Lagway closer. I don't think almost anyone in the country would say DJ Lagway is a better quarterback than Sam Levitt when you factor in all capabilities. But yet he's the one that's closer to signing with the power program, historically good or good now. So very interesting to see that trend. Are there any other final portal thoughts as we're starting to get a lot of commitments coming in now, but still there's plenty to still be had.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like one of the more under the radar because of the disappointing season, I guess you could say. Um, Portal things to watch is going to be South Carolina and their offensive line. They did get 2 O-line commits the other day, but they lost 7 guys to the portal. So even just from the perspective of like having enough depth, if guys are going down and getting injured, that'll be something interesting to watch as Shane Beamer tries to kind of like build back up the program after a definitely disappointing and regression filled 2025. I think it'll also be interesting. I know Florida State has signed a quarterback in the portal, but see if they go in on DJ and try to pull two of them out of there. I don't know. I think it'll be interesting. Obviously, the transfer that Florida State has landed is a SEC transfer, right? So there's the presumption that there's some talent there and things like that. But I feel like we still have a lot of bigger names or bigger guys who haven't made a decision yet. And I mean, that's good for us. It keeps interesting news coming in. But I don't know, maybe it makes them think twice a little bit about these decisions because, you know, thousands of these players enter the transfer portal every year, and then some of them we never hear from again. So maybe we're going to see a slight slowdown. I doubt it, but who knows?
I mean, we had at one point this off season. Well, I guess we're not even in the off season. We're still in the postseason because there's still playoff games to be had, which we'll get to in just a few moments. But 4,000 players were in the portal at one point in time, which is crazy to think. That's just so many people jumping teams. Yeah, it's very crazy to kind of wrap your head around that sort of thing. So we'll have to see kind of what the portal does. I do want to give a minor shout out to players of bowl game teams. I did not feel as though that the sit outs were as drastic this bowl season, which did leave a lot of great football outside the Independence Bowl. Just about every other bowl game was very entertaining to watch and very good football to watch with the smaller amount of sit outs. So I got to give a big shout out to the players that decided to finish their season with their team before going to said portal or before going to the draft. It did make a difference in the football quality and for us fans. So shout out to them, and then hopefully best of luck to them in the portal for those who left after playing their bowl game. So shout out to them. We are on to our picks now. This is the first period week of PAC-South podcast that we will have multiple sports being picked. I guess that's not true. We did do World Series back before we went to college.
That's true.
Only.
That's true.
So, okay. College only official pick, PAC-South. This is actually what we do now. Anyway, we are going to men's college basketball first in a inverse of what you would expect from the football season. You have currently undefeated number 10 Nebraska playing still a very good unranked Indiana team. Obviously, Indiana historically at the Assembly Hall has been the better team in this matchup, but that's not what we have this season. Nebraska has figured out how to play on hopes, dreams, and fundamentals, and they're currently undefeated, number 10 in the country. And I really like them to make a statement win over the Hoosiers because you see this matchup and you go, there's no way that an Indiana team doesn't win, especially when I think a lot of the talking heads are looking at this matchup and go, I'm used to Indiana being good with football as well right now. So it's easy just to continue, well, they're always good at basketball. I'm going to go basketball. No. Cornhuskers will continue to bounce past their way to an undefeated season for now. But I like them here against Indiana.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really competitive game. Both of these teams are pretty solid squads. Um, Indiana's had some bumps in the road this season, losing to, I don't know, I guess you could say like a few teams that they probably feel like they should have beaten. Obviously, they already have one conference loss, but they kind of let a game against Kentucky, I believe it was at Rupp, get away from them a little bit. Right? They were kind of in that for most of that game. And then they obviously opened up Big Ten play, losing to Minnesota. So I feel like, I don't know, they're motivated to get one of these wins, but I think Nebraska is a different team this year. I think they're overall stronger than they have been in the past. Obviously, you mentioned not a traditionally strong basketball school, um, but they kind of won some people's hearts the past few years with the energy that they've played with. So I don't know. I like the Huskers here, but I do think this is going to be a close game, especially because these teams aren't super, super far apart. When you look at like advanced metrics like Ken Palm, net rankings, things like that, they're like relatively close. Net, there's a bigger gap, but
Okay. So both going Huskers there. Other matchup, we have Illinois versus Iowa, 16 versus 19 in men's basketball as well. I think that this ranking really does not do this matchup justice. I think Iowa's pretty on par there at 19, but Illinois at 16. They've had some brutal matchups that they've had to play. One of their losses being to a team that we just discussed in Nebraska, but they also have wins against Ohio State, 13 Tennessee, not to mention a massive win over rival Missouri at a neutral site, which I was in attendance for. That game was ugly, ugly. It was never close. That was the biggest uh, margin of victory in that. Like, I think it's history.
wow.
And I think it was, what do we have here? 43 points. 43 points was the margin of victory for the Illini over Missouri, who is traditionally a not bad basketball program. So large margin of victory. They held them to the fewest points since the end of World War II.
Wow.
So not only can this team score a lot, they can also play defense when they need to. So I like the Illini. I mean, I didn't give the Hawkeyes kind of any credit there, but I don't know how I can really follow that up with anything more than like just how good Illinois has been this year.
Yeah.
Following last year, they were a great team and had a disappointing tournament. Turned around this season is like, I don't know. Like, we'll have to see what they get with the portal guys. They got a couple guys from Europe, and they are elevating this team further than what it was last year. So I like the Illini to get another good win.
I'm gonna get a little bold here. I think Iowa's gonna win this game. Iowa's a scrappy team. Um, they came into this season with not a whole lot of people really like paying attention to them or reading much into them as a squad. They played a great game against Iowa State, had a chance to win that game. Unfortunately for them, let it get away from them. But this is year one for Ben McCollum. He's a great young coach. I think he is kind of what Iowa basketball needed a little bit, in the sense that obviously Fran McCaffrey, did a fantastic job there. However, he was getting a little bit older. And McCollum has sort of proven at various stops. I forget what Division II program he was at, but he had tremendous success there when he was the coach of Drake, guiding them to an NCAA tournament appearance. I just really like him as a basketball coach. I like the energy that he's brought into this Iowa program. And Iowa just lost up at the barn last night to Minnesota. Shout out Minnesota. They're on a great run right now. So I think that lights a little bit of a fire under them. They don't want to lose 2 Big Ten games in a row, especially as a team that is now in the top 25, that now has decent tournament expectations. You don't want to let the season get away from you. So I like Iowa to upset. I know they're super close in rankings, but upset Illinois this weekend.
Okay. First differ of the week there. Our final men's basketball pick of the week. We have unranked West Virginia playing number 7 Houston. I believe this is a Monday night game or a Super Tuesday game, one of the two. It is definitely a weeknight. Try to differentiate our games the best I could there. Um, but yeah, this is, I think, a surprising matchup for the Cougars. I think this is something that they should not sleep on. This West Virginia team has proven that they can do what they need to do in the games that they're expected to do so. Their losses coming against teams like Clemson by 3. They have a loss to Xavier. I believe it's a 1 point loss. Yes, 1 point loss to Ohio State. That is in double overtime. And then a loss to Wake Forest. That unfortunately was 9 point loss. So the games that they maybe aren't expected to lose or aren't expected to win, they're not able to finish or win. But all of the games on their schedule that they have played, they have won and done so emphatically. So this is kind of one of those matchups where it's like, can they flip the switch on Houston on a weeknight to get a big win? For Houston, you then have to battle the weeknight curse. Have to look out for these potential upsets on a team that's not that bad. But I mean, Houston, it kind of goes without saying just what kind of a program they are, what they've been able to build up the last, 4, 5, 6 seasons for what they were historically, what they fell to, and what they've brought back to. And I think this is an important game to make sure that you don't fall asleep at, to continue to show that you are Houston. This is what you are. So I like the Cougars to get a win. I think this is going to be a competitive game and a shocking game, but it's one of those games that the Cougars just need to survive, and they will.
Yeah, I agree with you with your pick. I definitely think Houston's going to win this game. I don't agree with you, however, on the, we'll say, proximity of the game. I think Houston wins pretty comfortably. I'm not really sold on West Virginia this year. You mentioned they have played some close games against some pretty solid teams. Obviously, Clemson's a quad one opponent. Ohio State's a quad one opponent. But they haven't beaten a quad one or two team all year, right? They are 0-3, I want to say, because I know they got blown out by Iowa State. Yeah, I think they're 0-3 in quad one. I believe 0-1, maybe 0-2. No, because Xavier's definitely quad 3. Yeah, 0-1 against quad 2 teams. They've been winning against, the weaker opponents that they've played, minus Xavier. However, I'm just really not convinced that they are in a position to, let's say, succeed. Obviously, it's a bit of a transition year for them. They didn't expect their coach to bail on them right after the tournament last year and go to Indiana a year after hiring him. However,
Yes.
sometimes that's just how things work out. So I don't think expectations are super high in Morgantown. I would love to see them get back to being the quality of program they were in sort of those earlier Big 12 days, late Big East days, or most of the Big East, really. But I don't think this one's going to be particularly close, and I think Houston kind of just rolls through them.
Okay. Do things change a little bit if they play Kansas strong on Saturday?
Perhaps, but I don't know. For me, Kansas is also one of those teams where I feel it's like two different teams. Like Kansas with Darren Peterson is one thing, and then Kansas without Darren Peterson's another thing. Obviously, when he plays, big win. You can see why he's projected by some people to be the number one pick over AJ Dybonsa. But there's also been that issue of he doesn't play super consistently. There's long stretches where he sits out. Just look at the UCF game the other day. He played the first half, played fantastic, and then sat out the entire second half in a really close and competitive game that Kansas ultimately lost. So I don't know. I guess if Peterson plays and then they keep it close and I don't know, maybe even beat Kansas, yeah, that might change my tune a little bit. But I don't know. Obviously Kansas is Kansas in terms of the name and the brands, but talent-wise, I don't think they're that traditional Kansas team this year. They're probably going to be a 3 seed, 4 seed when it comes tournament time.
Okay. All right, so not too much change there. Going over to women's basketball, then we have number 2 Texas going against number 12 LSU. This game is on a day, Sunday. This one is on Sunday for the weekend matchup in a We Back Pat game. Obviously, Pat Summit for the SEC, former Tennessee Volunteer women's basketball coach and legend. Um, Really interesting matchup here. Texas undefeated, has some marquee wins, only behind UConn, who is obviously UConn when it comes to women's basketball. They have a win over recent power and borderline dynasty South Carolina this season already. So Longhorns look to be playing very good basketball. LSU has a national title in recent years, has also a very good roster under Kim Mulkey this season, but has dropped their first 2 games in SEC play to number 11 Kentucky and number 12 Vanderbilt. So not a great start for the Tigers to start SEC play. They do have Georgia tomorrow night, and obviously the Texas game is Sunday. I think this is a very, very important matchup for the Tigers. They should win their matchup against Georgia tomorrow. This matchup against Texas, though, will really decide if LSU is going to be a legit team this year in the SEC or not. I don't think that this really nullifies their chance at having a tournament team, but if they want to compete, I mean, they're Oklahoma, who Texas has already beaten this year. Oklahoma has 1 loss. I believe it is Vanderbilt is 1 loss on the season, but nothing in conference play. South Carolina, 1 loss on the season to Texas. And I believe there's another team up there that I am blanking
Kentucky?
on toward the top. Kentucky. Yes, Kentucky, 1 loss, undefeated in conference play. Tennessee also surprising, undefeated in conference play, but 3 losses total to start the season. So LSU, there's a lot of great teams in women's basketball in the SEC top of the conference this season. So LSU really needs to get this win, and I think they will under Kim Mulkey's scrappiness as a coach. They do have great players still on that team, and coming into conference play, they were undefeated. Just very bad timing to get your first 2 losses of the season back to back. Really need to get this Georgia win to get some momentum into this Texas game. But this Texas game is going to be super important for this Tiger team to have any kind of foothold in the conference this season. If Texas were to win this game, though, I mean, look out, big SEC like implications for the season, and very much could be a 1 seed going into the tournament, but that is a couple months away. But give me LSU to get a much needed upset win.
I don't know much about women's basketball. I don't pretend to know much about women's basketball. I know that Madison Booker is pretty good at basketball, and I know that LSU has had some issues this year with kind of like closing out games, late game decisions. I believe Malaysia Fulwiley like threw the ball away against Kentucky the other day, and that's how they wound up losing. Texas obviously is the higher ranked team in this scenario, so being that I'm not super educated on women's basketball, I know Madison Booker is pretty good. I'm sure they have a lot of other good players if they're the second best team in the country, but give me Texas.
Okay. So 2 differs on the basketball, and then that brings us to the football, what has been the PAC-South bread and butter thus far. We're going to start off with the Fiesta Bowl. That is Miami versus Ole Miss, the 10 versus 6 seed. And obviously, you called the Miami game last week. You made the call. You called yourself crazy. You made the jump. And maybe it's me buying into it, which is detrimental to them, if that is the case. But thinking about it, watching it, this has to be where Miami wants to be, right? As a program, like
Yeah.
everyone wants to say the U is back. They came in with a chip on their shoulder because maybe they should have been in, maybe they shouldn't have been in. Obviously, your issue as a Notre Dame supporter is more with Alabama. nonetheless, Miami is the last team in, so it doesn't matter. So they
Yeah.
feel that pressure of, we were the team that shouldn't have been here. We need to win these games. We need to prove ourselves. We need to prove that U is back. Um, and being the lowest seed in this playoff, I don't think they can feel that the U is back until they win. Because in years past, you kind of get like, oh, Miami's really good. Miami's really good. And then all of a sudden you get the week 9, 10, 11. They're undefeated or with one loss. And then they just like blow it. They like lose to like a Duke, a Pittsburgh. And then the wheels kind of fall off from there. The wheels didn't really fall off from there, but they did have losses that made them question themselves. There's no time to question themselves here. You either win or you don't. And the U isn't back until the U has a national title. So I like Miami to beat Ole Miss. Um, Ole Miss, great showing last week against Georgia. That was an
Yeah.
amazing game. Uh, both offenses were incredible outside of whatever Kirby Smart was trying to do with special teams throughout the entire game. Uh, but I like the Hurricanes to upset the Rebels, I guess you could say, uh, to get to the finals and to try and prove that the U is back, because they are definitely playing with a chip on their shoulder, and I think they will continue to do so.
Yeah. I think based on my pick last week, you can probably infer where I'm going with this. I've ridden Miami to this point in the playoff. Like you mentioned, as somebody who grew up a Notre Dame fan before going to South Carolina, and still roots for Notre Dame in like a, we'll say, like maybe a slightly more casual way than I used to, but still pulls for them. Um, I didn't have issue with Miami getting in, right? I did take more umbrage with Alabama, and I think Miami's proved to this point why they belonged in the playoff and why they were chosen. And I would argue Alabama has proven why they did not belong in the playoff and why they potentially should not have been chosen, right? They beat a fairly up and down all season Oklahoma team and then just get absolutely boat raced by Indiana at the Rose Bowl. So, um, with that being said, I'm still back in the U here to get it done in Phoenix or Scottsdale, wherever they technically play this, and move on to the national championship.
Okay, so we are alike on one of the semifinals. The second semifinal, obviously, is the Peach Bowl. Number 5, Oregon against the only team to win a bye week playoff game. That is Indiana. Um, I've seen a lot of Kurt Sidnetti clips over the last week, and I have to say, I wish I saw them before the Rose Bowl. That would have made me feel even more confident, because that's a team that they kind of thrive on that. They thrive on, we're going to show up, we're going to do our thing, but like when we're locked in, we're locked in. It's not a, we need to continuously rep. We need to just work ourselves tirelessly. They practice for an hour and 35 to an hour and 45 minutes. That's their practice. They show up. It's 3 days a week like that. That's it. So when they're playing, it's meaningful. Every single snap, every single rep means that much more. So when they're in a game, same thing. Everything means that much more. It's not tireless reps, tireless reps, tireless game. Like, you don't need to continuously do what you're doing. Like, you know what you do, and when it's time to show up, you do it. I wish I knew that before. Um, as it pertains to this matchup, this is psychological warfare from two football psychos. These two guys, if you haven't seen, are just going back and forth, quote for quote, as how good each team is. And I think that that is super fun in this day of college football. Oregon, got to give them credit from what they did last year, undefeated, and then losing in the playoff game, to then have 2 playoff wins this season, getting to this point. Big hats off to them. I think them running into this program that the Hoosiers have built is going to be the wall that stops the Ducks. I think that this team maybe even better than the team that they had last year that went undefeated for 13 games. But this Hoosier team is well coached, they're well disciplined, and they perform when they need to. So I like the Hoosiers to get it done against the Ducks in the Peach Bowl.
So clearly, we don't talk about our picks beforehand, but I am actually going in the opposite direction. I'm going with Oregon in this one, and I've been pro Indiana pretty much all year, especially after they beat Oregon in Eugene uh, fairly early into the season, kind of showing that this was a different Indiana team than last year, even though I still felt last year they deserved to be in the playoff. Regardless, I kind of am, I know it's coach speak, but buying in a little bit to what Kirk Signetti's talking about when he says it's hard to beat a good team twice. Um, I don't know. I feel like this Oregon team's grown since they lost to Indiana, and B, it's just I don't know. It's one of those things where it's going to be such a fine margin that decides this game. I'm not sure if Dante Moore is going to make some of the same mistakes that he made that first time around, and I'm not sure if Fernando Mendoza is going to find the same success that he found the first time around. So even though Indiana's been an awesome story this year, and it's been amazing for us to watch as college football fans, I think the dream does not end in a national championship. And I think the Ducks get their revenge, get their get back here and go on to play Miami for the national title.
All right. Lots of different picks this week. Peach Bowl should be very interesting to watch. I think that will definitely be the best of the two games.
Yeah.
But you never know with how these semifinal matchups have been in the past. These have been also some of the blowout games without group of five teams, believe it or not, for the haters on the big networks that say the group of five needs to be out. Final shot of the day for that. But we look forward to seeing our playoff matchups. We look forward to finally diving into basketball even further. We are very thankful for bowl season and the FCS National Championship. Again, a final thank you and congratulations to the Montana State Bobcats. For Pat, I am TJ. This has been the first PacSouth production on our own YouTube channel. We look forward to seeing you all again very soon.